welcome to the Habibis podcast. 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea. I'm your host for today, Fawzi Musmar.
And I'm Rami Ismail.
And I'm Osama Dorius. And today I actually have a couple of things I wanted to talk about. One is a game I played, and one is a game I watched. or rather,
game you watched.
or rather, a movie about a game.
Okay.
So I watched some Mortal Kombat. Yeah, the new one, the 2021 Mortal Kombat.
Does it have the song? Osama, does it have the song?
Well, it has everything from the game. It has way too much from the game. But I'm getting ahead of myself, Fauzi. You made me cut to the chase.
I'm talking about the Mortal Kombat techno song. It was a techno song.
Yeah, they have it, but it's not techno. But they have it. Yes, or maybe in the credits. I don't know. I didn't listen through this credits. It's very, very possible that they brought the techno version in the credits as well.
Is it good?
That is really hard to answer. If you're gonna twist my arm, I'm gonna say no.
Perfect.
But I don't think anyone who has... Okay, let's put it this way. If you've never heard of or seen a Mortal Kombat, which I granted, it's a pretty hard thing to... it's a pretty big brand. But assuming someone just doesn't know what a Mortal Kombat is, they've heard about it in passing, but they're not part of the lore, I don't think anyone who's in that situation will look at the movie and say, this is a good movie. This movie wasn't made for mass market. This movie was made clearly for Mortal Kombat fans. There's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge every 2 minutes. Source material, huh? So I'm not even kidding. Every catchphrase you can think of in Mortal Kombat had a scene. A scene that set it up. Everything. Fatality, get over here, finish him, name it. There's a scene, and then someone yells out that catchphrase. And you can tell that yes.
There's Toasty.
You know what? I don't remember, but I'd be comfortable enough saying yes just because of everything else that was there. I don't particularly remember if Toasty was there specifically, but I would not be surprised. It wasn't Ed Boon's voice, that much is for sure.
All right. But before you jump into talking more about the movie, since we're still starting to see how good or bad this movie is. If you were to place the 3 Mortal Kombat movies, right? There's the first Mortal Kombat, the second Mortal Kombat, and this one. From the worst to the best, what's the order?
Okay, it's hard to answer because the first one's a little fuzzy. I watched it a million years ago and not much since. They're all dumb. They're all bad in their own way. So this is from bad to not as bad. I would still put this one, I think, is my favorite from the 3.
Okay, yeah. That's high praise. The first 2 are classics.
Yes, they're classics. Yeah, classics. They absolutely, that's a good word. This one is an instant classic. I would put it as an instant classic.
Cult classic.
Cult classic. Yeah, that's more accurate. So yeah, you know how usually you would start a movie or any kind of project by writing an outline and then filling it in? I think they started with the catchphrases and they just spread them out. And they're how do we write a story that could get us to say the most catchphrases as possible? The special effects were surprisingly good. Some of the characters, the I don't know if I should spoil which characters are in the game. In the movie or not. But some of the characters are really well done, especially the CG heavy characters. If you know Mortal Kombat, you know what I'm talking about. They looked surprisingly well done. The fight choreography was great. It was actually the fight scenes. A lot of them were okay, this is damn really cool. Any talking scenes you could just fast forward. I think someone could make a 20-minute version of this movie that's just much, much better than the actual movie.
Can anybody do a 20-second version with all the dialogue?
I can do it for you now, Rami. I can do one for you right now. It said we need to defeat Shang Tsung. Yes, let's defeat Shang Tsung. It'll be that.
Nice.
It's almost like really the setup is so corny, but like it's Mortal Kombat. I mean, if we were in charge of making a Mortal Kombat movie and we'd have to write a script for it, I don't know how we could make it not corny. It's a corny setup, right? Like a tournament to save the world from another realm. It's like, how do you do that well? I don't know. I think it was good for what it was, but what it was is like more fan service. That's really what it was. It's like, hey, you're fans of it. We're gonna make a high budget movie where you get squee every time we mention something that you love, and you're gonna love it. And that's it. Like I squeed a couple of times, and then I rolled my eyes a few times, and it was fine. I watched it throughout. I watched it from beginning to end, and that's something,
Did you? Is it a particularly gory movie?
Yes.
Okay.
No. It's a Mortal Kombat movie in every way you can imagine, and it even has like a lot of profanity and things like that. Like they use that R rating to
maximum effect.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very gory.
It's like Mortal Kombat with a rolling R everywhere.
Yes. There are limbs flying. There are even children dying. Like it's
wow.
It's content warning. It's not tame. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It didn't exactly do for movies what it did for games in the 90s, but like, it's there. It did something.
Right.
So yeah, you could watch it on HBO Max if that didn't turn you off from it. I still enjoyed it. I can't say it's a good movie, but I can say it's an enjoyable one if you like the franchise. That's something, right? The other thing that I played, quote unquote, is a game called Foregone.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was an impulse buy. I was browsing the PlayStation website. The game came out, I think, at the end of last year, and I saw a game that kind of looked like Dead Cells, and I really liked Dead Cells. Dead Cells is, one of my favorite games from when the year it came out. What was it? 2019, 2018? I forget.
I think it must have been 19. Yeah.
Yeah. Really liked it.
Probably even further.
On the screenshots, that's what it looked like. I watched a video. I'm like, yep, I like the combat, and I bought it. I started playing it, and it is not a Dead Cells.
I was just about to say, I was like, how are you going to get from here to there? But it's not.
It's not. There's really not much about it that's a Dead Cells. I think an impossible. I'm usually better at this. I research things. I look them up, whatever. I really, really felt like playing a combat platformer. So whatever.
Yeah.
So the game is exactly that. It's a platformer with a high emphasis on combat, or at least that's what it claims to be. One of the taglines that I think I saw was, it's the Dark Souls of the genre. It's not a roguelike because you make progress and you could continue again, but like you have a progression tree, and you get it's a looter type based platformer, and it's supposed to be getting harder and harder. I played it for like 3-4 hours. It didn't get very hard, honestly, at this point, and there were a lot of really questionable design decisions in the game. I'm not bringing the game necessarily to be like, hey, it's bad. So let's start with the good stuff, right? It's actually pretty. It's pretty to look at. It's not my type of pixel art. In the screenshots, it looked great. And then when I saw it in movement, the movement is too fluid. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And now I realize why. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost convinced that it's actually 3D models that somebody exported pixel art from. Because there's certain art to doing pixel art where you skip a few frames to make the movement seem more like impactful or powerful.
Right.
Like each screenshot looks like it's drawn like a painting. This didn't feel like that. It felt like I'm playing a 3D game with a filter on top of it. A really, really impressive pixel art filter. But a filter nonetheless. I'm a fan of pixel art. I actually love pixel art, the craft of pixel art. So the screenshots looked much better. When I started in movement, it didn't. That part didn't appeal to me. So if you're a fan of pixel art, you might like it less. But it's still, the end result is good. It's not a bad looking game. It's just not a pixel art, like traditional pixel art game. The backgrounds are better for that. They look like they're hand painted. The combat if I could go to the combat, it's actually weird. At parts, it actually feels really good. The jumping feels good, the attacking feels good, the dodging feels good. And other parts are like, why did you do it this way? So the ranged weapons, you don't have any say in the aim. You just, whether you're just shooting either left or right. And it kind of hones in at the closest enemy in that direction. So there's no skill other than pressing the button to the ranged combat, which is odd because if you're claiming this is a Dark Souls of video games, then it's all supposed to be supposed to be about skill. Also, your weapon, your ammo from your ranged weapon recharges whenever you do a melee attack. So you're constantly going from melee to range, which was a fun dynamic. But I never felt like basically what ended up happening is I'd empty out my quiver and then rush in and fill it up again and then empty. It was such a predictable pattern throughout the game where I'm like that. I never have a reason not to shoot until I run out of ammo. There's no, I'm not conserving ammo. I'm not thinking deliberately. I'm just like, you get into this weird flow where you're like, the game is easy. It's not very difficult. The enemies don't have a very predictable AI. It's like I don't know. It was kind of disappointing, to be honest.
If I just say like it's good but not special, would that be?
Yeah. That's actually really a really good way of saying it. It's like I think it's uneven. I don't know I don't know about like the dev team that made it or anything like that, but I felt like the skill level of different disciplines were very, very uneven, where some things were much, much better made than others. The UI needed to be overhauled. It was so unintuitive. Even after 3 hours, I kept making mistakes, selling things I meant to, or salvaging things I meant to upgrade and vice versa, which is so frustrating when you're like, you have this thing, oh, cool, I'm going to upgrade it, and then it's gone. And you're like, what? No, I pressed the wrong button again, because it's odd. The buttons, depending on what you pressed before, they change function. So you have to, I didn't get used to it by the end of that. I had to think deliberately. And whenever I just went into automatic, I regretted it. So there are a lot of things like that needed to be smoothed out. I'm really hoping that this is the dev team's first or one of their first games, because I see potential in that team. I think they can grow and do much better.
I think they're in Ontario somewhere in Canada, and from what I remember, they were mostly known for like what was it called? It was this. It's more of a. I'm not sure if it's a children's game or not, but it was something with monsters that do singing.
Okay.
I think it was more of a children's studio, and this was sort of their action game.
Okay.
So I think they have previous work, but I don't think it's in the genre.
Okay, well that adds up. That makes sense.
Right.
I don't think it'll take them long, because there's definitely a lot of good in it. So I don't think it'll take them long to figure out which parts of it need to be improved, and I'm sure their next games in this genre will be better if they continue in this direction. But that was it. That's it for my week. What about you? Who's next? Rami?
No,
okay.
No, I'll go first. Since we're talking
okay. Yeah. Khalas, you go.
Talking about the combat games and stuff.
Go for it. Let's follow.
So I played a game called Curse of the Dead Gods.
Dramatic.
Curse of the Dead. Was that? Yes. It starts with curse. I gotta give it the respect. The title. It's also an indie game. I think it's made by a small team in Lyon. Pastec Games.
Pastec, yeah.
Pastec Games. When you have a first look, I think the biggest disservice this game gets is that at a glance you might think you're looking at Hades. And I think if you look anywhere around the internet around this game, you're gonna see Hades being put in the same statement as this game. And it's because it's a roguelike, isometric view, slightly cartoonish, with dark, bold outlines of the character, and a very slick and good combat with curses and dead people and stuff like that. But but it plays very different than Hades. It has a lot of like interesting structures to kind of introduce to it. And like they're both good games. So like, but it's one of those things in which like, being compared to Hades all the time kind of, does it a disservice, because it's hard not to think about Hades as you're looking at this game, or when like you're first viewing it and all of this stuff. The combat is tight, controls are tight, plays really well. It's what you'd expect. You got attack buttons, you got the two-handed weapons, you got your dual-wielding weapons, attack, dodge, hold, attack to do a big attack. We got melee weapon, range weapon. You can chain both of these into a combo. And you have parry, which is pretty cool. I know Osama likes this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Fighting game staple.
Yeah, like the parry timing is pretty tight on this one. Dodge, you do like last minute dodge, right timing parry, you get extra stuff. So like, the combat is a lot of what you expect, but also like, controls really tight and like, feels good. It's fun to play. Mm-hmm. The stuff I like about the structure on this game, it kind of eases you into the systems. So like, you start off by...
Is it also a roguelike, like Hades? Or is it?
It is a roguelike. Okay. This is what I'm telling you. Like, you can't talk about this game without comparing it to Hades. Especially because, like, it's such a good game. Both of these are good games, and like they came out at very close time periods, and they look very similar.
It's unfortunate for Curse of the Dead Gods that like it has so many things in common because of the comparison. Because Hades is a masterpiece.
It's so good.
But this looks really good too.
But this game is really, really good, man. Like, this game is a lot of fun too. So this is why I'm saying it's a disservice that gets compared to Hades, because it's not more of the same, though it's the same genre and like, very similar kind of thing.
So, okay, how about this? So, like, we can't avoid the comparison. So, what does Curse of the Dead Gods do that Hades doesn't, that make it stand out?
So, like, I like some of the systems that Curse of the Dead Gods have. So, for example, it, like, really eases you into the systems. You go, like, there's multi levels in which you can pick to start the game from. And then it generates a map of... the reward that you get at the end of every room. And it's a branching path that you can choose which way you want to go. Do you want to get an item that upgrades me, or do you want to get a healing this time around? And to proceed from one room to the other, you have to fulfill that room's objective, which is usually, defeat all enemies. And there's booby traps and stuff. As you go through the door to move on so you defeat all the enemies, the door unlocks, you open the door, you get a bit of curse points. And like a curse bar fills up. And every time you go through one of these doors, you get more curse. And once the bar fills up, you get cursed. And the curse is like some kind of random thing that now affects your run. So, for example, a curse could be, from now on, you're going to need to parry every chest you open in order for you to actually open it. So I can try to open a chest, the chest can explode, you have to parry it, that's the one way you can open it from now on. And then now that becomes a permanent effect that affects the rest of your run.
Very cool.
And if you get like up to 5 curses, I haven't got to the 5th curse, but if you get to like the 5th curse, apparently it really impedes the way you play the game. But every time I died before that happened, so isn't that bad. Or like either died or managed to finish the map. Okay. So you could go. So like it's kind of like if you want to go the longer route in which you collect more buffs, then you get more curses. So it's kind of like an interesting system to kind of balance it out.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating, honestly.
It's a really fun system because, like, the discovering all the curses is kind of interesting. Discovering all the buffs is also interesting. Discovering all the weapons and the combination of how the weapons and all of that stuff work together is also a lot of fun. It's kind of like there's enough experimentation in it. That's kind of like, like Hades. We can like experiment with a lot of combinations and see what might happen. That's a lot of fun.
Right.
The combat is tight, so like getting good at the game is fun in its own right.
Right.
and like trying to min-max your way without getting, curses, or like trying to find out which currency you need to spend to get the best out of your run is also pretty good. So I think like, the way the game shows you progression feels pretty neat. Sometimes like in roguelikes, it feels kind of punishing that you have to start everything from the beginning and use the buffs and like see how far that gets you. This game like always tells you like it's a tiered level temple, and you can finish a tier and then you can start from another tier, and you have to finish the first tier to unlock the second tier. So it progressively allows you to grow through the game. It's just pretty neat.
It looks gorgeous. I'm watching the videos and it looks really nice.
It's very pretty, yeah.
For a small team of 12, man, it's very impressive. It doesn't have like the narrative that Hades does. So like if you go like what the Hades has that this game doesn't have is that, the music and the story and like, Supergiant trademark finesse is not there.
Right.
But, the two different companies make it two different games that I think are just within close proximity of each other, which I find also fascinating.
Yeah. It's like zeitgeist of creating games. Like things just converge at the same time. It happens more often.
Yeah. I'm just really interested in the sort of like negative procedural generation. Like that sounds way more interesting from we prototyped with that a little bit before Vlaambir shut down in a project. But roguelikes are usually used to strengthen your character, right? Yeah. Like the sort of like procedural randomness is like what build do I build? And the randomness in terms of negative feedback or not positive feedback usually comes from level generation or from mechanical exploration. And kind of flipping that around a little sounds really fun.
And that's like the interesting part. All the curses I've seen so far is not curses to your character per se, but it's more like an added effect to either the dungeon or the props or enemies that you face. Right. So it's still like within the level, not necessarily a debuff on your own character. But it's still like, hinders your way. That said, I'm yet to unlock a lot of curses to see like the depth of the system.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of randomness there.
Nice. Sounds awesome. Yeah, I'll give it a go.
I'll go buy those games that's fun to get good at. You know what I mean? Like
I'm convinced.
There's like, the timing, like the parry is so difficult to time it correctly. You need to study like, the movement of the enemy and the timing of your parry, because it's not instant parry like you're used to in Street Fighter. There's a bit of like an animation build up into the parry moment. It's brief. Okay. It's very brief and fast, but it's it's not as instant as you would in like a Street Fighter game.
Yeah, like a one frame parry.
Okay, maybe I'm less convinced.
Give it a
very good. I will say I'm not very good at parry mechanics in general. It's just not entirely my thing.
I think parry, like they identify that parrying is difficult, so they don't expect you to be good at it. Like it's not Sekiro.
Okay.
It's kind of like, but if you can pull it off, we'll reward you with stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I'm not saying I'm particularly good with parry mechanics. Like Sekiro is really, really a hard game. I loved it in Ghost of Tsushima, for example. I love it in Street Fighter Third Strike. I loved it in the equivalent in Garou. I love the parry mechanic, but when it becomes the only way to get past something, it becomes tiresome. It takes it's heavy load for somebody to have that kind of reflexes all the time.
It's a big punish if you whiff,
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's true.
And it should be, because the risk reward, right? So,
all right. So Curse of the Dead Gods.
Curse of the Dead Gods. It's out on everything, really. I'm playing it on Switch, but it's on Steam, on PS4, and Xbox. Yeah, good game.
Great.
I'll grab it on Switch.
Yeah.
So, my turn?
Robbie.
Yeah. Can I? Am I good, Fuzzy?
You can go.
Okay.
You can go.
You sure? You sure?
You have another list of 15 games for us?
Well, the game plan. So what you've done, now you caught me and Rami up in this mess.
It's all my fault.
Okay, so last week I told you I started Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War.
Yes.
Right?
You finished the campaign?
I finished it as fast as I thought I would. It is actually... So, my favorite Call of Duty, just for background, is Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And I thought it was interesting because it was not a linear campaign per se. It had a bit of not open worldness, but you could kind of like figure out some optional objectives, do some missions that you didn't need to do, and like kind of feel like you're in charge of how this thing goes down. Call of Duty, I'm just going to call it Cold War for now. Call of Duty Cold War brings that back a little bit. So there's the main story progression. Between that are these narrative hub moments where you're in this hub space with the other main characters, and you can talk to them, you can listen to them interact with each other, you can kind of like mess around. And in traditional Black Ops tradition, something is off about everything, right? It's not explicit, but you always feel that there's something under the surface. Like something is just not right. And as you continue, there are these optional objectives that you can complete that give you access to optional missions that you can complete. And you're kind of trying to build a case to chase somebody down, right? It is a Black Ops game, which means that you can pretty much, in the campaign, assume that at some point it goes really psychedelic. This one does as well. And I think that if I had to describe Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War in a quick sentence, it is the Cold War part of this game is extremely tiring. The narrative is not interesting. It's still shooting lots of people that were just living in their own country. It's spectacular, sure, but like it didn't do much for me. Mm-hmm. The Black Ops parts of this game, which is the narrative, the sort of like talking to your crew, the optional missions, the psychedelic stuff, that is phenomenally executed. Mm. I had a great time, especially as the game sort of like went off the rails. It was just really, really fun. Like some good set pieces, clever use of mechanics, like honestly, one of the more clever Call of Duty games, and narratively, it actually sort of like wraps up the Cold War stuff pretty well as well. Like, there's not really a hoo-ha USA thing going on here. Like, it's more of a like maybe just war is bad thing, which is a surprising message for a Call of Duty game. Mm-hmm. I was not unimpressed. I had a good time. I then immediately uninstalled it because it was like 200 gigs on my PlayStation.
It's massive.
So big. That was gone. And then I downloaded. I had a little bit of time to kill until the next game I played. So I did my usual, and I looked around a bit. I played some Flight Simulator. I had a good time with that. And then I played a game called Orbital Bullet. Orbital Bullet. I came across Orbital Bullet at a PAX. I don't remember which PAX. It's basically just a very traditional like shoot things roguelike.
Okay.
Side scroller. You just shoot things. But one of the interesting things is it takes place on a cylinder. Mm. So the level is wrapped around a cylinder.
I'm getting a lot of Resogun vibes.
So yes, if you think Resogun, but instead of Defender, it's it's Contra. Right. So Resogun, if instead of Defender, the base was Contra, then you've got Orbital Bullet.
So I mean, I like the concept. Does the cylinder part, is it only aesthetically different, or does it actually have any, like, does it change the gameplay in any way? Like, I'm looking at a video and I see that some guns wrap around in an interesting way. Okay.
Right. So they're using it in multiple ways. Like, obviously it's interesting in that you can see further because you can, like, the bullets just follow the curvature.
Yes.
So you have a pretty complete overview of the level at most times. The other thing that I think is interesting is there's multiple layers to the cylinder. So you can hop forward or backward into the Z-axis, into the depth, and fight things on different layers. Some boss fights use that. Some platforms use that. They're just doing a lot of like fun, clever stuff.
That's cool.
The economy is pretty good. I think the progression can use some tweaking, but I think it's still in early access now. So I guess they'll be updating. I had a great time with it. It was fun. Games to watch this week for me. In Flight Simulator, VATSIM, which is the simulated air traffic control network, did a across the pond event where people, over almost 2,000 people, flew transoceanic flights from Europe to the US.
Wow.
And the fun thing about that is that real people are doing air traffic control for the airports along the way there.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's real people talking to real people. VATSIM is a 24/7 thing. It's always there. You can always use it. But these events are quite spectacular. 1,900 airplanes did a flight across the ocean. That was on April 25th. I came across a game that was announced a while ago, but didn't come up for a while again, and I'm not quite sure why it didn't. Why it didn't come up for a while. Mahdi Bahrami, who we've talked about before on the podcast, has his new game coming up.
Oh, cool.
Tandis, which is a game about mathematical transformations. If you've played Mahdi's work, Engare or Farsh, you know that he is particularly good at sort of like mind-bending mechanics that teach you something about geometry or math. Like, even though you don't have to understand those things, finishing these games will make you better at these things. And Tandis looks mind-blowing in that regard. Like, it's the thing where you watch the mechanics and you're like, and then, you know, he does something and you're like, wait, what? No, back, what? Oh my God. Wow. That's kind of how you watch it. It looks phenomenal, and it's available for wishlist on Steam. I'm not quite sure what the release date is. It's set as coming soon, but it'll be an instant buy for me. It's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, it looks really intriguing. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I mean, again, like I think Mahdi is one of the most exciting designers working in our space, especially when it comes to puzzle work. And this is, great. And then I found my new game. That was Nier Replicant, which is a remake of the original Nier, which a lot of complications there. There were two versions of that game, but this is a remaster, remake, redo, whatever it is, of Nier Replicant, which is the
PS3 game.
Right, the PS3 game. It's a prequel for the most people that will probably come into the series at Nier Automata. It's a prequel to Nier Automata. You don't need to know anything about Nier Automata because Automata takes place like over 15,000 years later, I think.
Oh, wow.
Nier is a sequel in spirit to Drakengard 3. Which you also need to know nothing about because they're only related for like a second in an optional ending from Drakengard 3. But the basic idea of Nier is that in some sort of post-apocalyptic world, there is a community in which a boy lives with his sister Yona, and his sister has a disease that will certainly prove fatal to her, and the boy finds a book, and this book has the power potentially to save not just the world but also fix that disease on a global scale. And sadly, the book has been smashed in the head with a sword a few times and has sort of like forgotten what it's capable of. So the story is sort of like it starts there and then it gets out of hand and, you know, giant things happen. But the base story of the game is pretty comfortable, right? Like, boy wants to save somebody dear and finds magical thing to make things happen. It starts relatively slow, and you can tell that this is old game design, right? You can tell that this is like 2010-ish game design. That said, it has definitely gotten a real good touch up. Like, I played the PS3 version back in the days, and I bounced off of it. I will admit, I just bounced off of the game. Maybe it was me, maybe it was just not having the literacy to understand the game, but I thought it was slow and the combat didn't feel particularly good, so I just kind of bounced off of it. This one has none of that. It's still slow, but there's a lot of like small quality of life improvements that make the game a little easier to work with. I think the movement and the combat feel much more satisfying. And it is near, so it is beautifully scored. Like, the audio, the music is just preposterously good. I'm really happy to spend some more time in that universe. And I'm really happy to get to like fully complete the first Nier now that I've played Automata and fallen in love with that game. So I'm having a really good time with that one.
Is it a big game, the Nier Replicant?
It's so like I said, I've never finished it. Right, I bounced off of the original the first time. Just like Nier Automata, it's not long per se, but there is you still have that thing where if you just finish the game once, you're not going to get the full game out of it.
I see.
So it'll probably still be like dozens of hours or maybe even more. I can't tell. I have a feeling the story is about to ramp up, and I'm at like 12 to 14 hours. I'm also a bit of a completionist, so I'm doing every side quest I find. So we'll see. I really like the book, the Grimoire. I hate a lot of the side quests, but it's like, go find 5 mouse tails and 5 lizard tails. I'm like, okay. And it's like, where do I find those? And it's like, in the world.
Oh no!
I'm like, what? And then eventually, I looked it up. And it turns out that in 2 of the zones, one of the zones I've been to and one of the zones I'd never been to because I hadn't even realized you can reach it, there are tiny lizards and mouse that run around the level that spawn, and if they get away, you will never find them again. So you have to leave the area again and go back in to make them respawn. And even if you manage to collect all of them, there's not enough in the area to get enough items for that quest. So you have to leave and get them to respawn again. I'm just sitting there just being like, I don't feel this is extremely respectful of my time. Right? I'm just not enjoying that. But the overall experience of the game so far has been really good. Like in pretty typical Yokotaro style, it builds slowly, and you get this sinking feeling that maybe things will not be all right, which is exciting. Then let's see. Oh, I saw a tweet today. Today, by the time everybody listens to this, it'll be a week ago. The team at Toge Productions over in Indonesia did premiere a new video at Ludonarracon, which was last week, for their new upcoming game of Space for the Unbound. And what I love about it, what I really love about it, honestly, is that it is, from what I understand, an authentic Indonesian experience set in the 90s. And Toge is a studio that I've been watching with a lot of interest, because over the past years, as they build up their strength as a studio, and they build up their network, and they build up their capacity, they've made a lot of games that aren't Indonesian, right? Not because they avoided it or anything, but because what they were making was meant to fit in the global market, right? And one of those is Coffee Talk, which I think a lot of people might have played, which is a game about, what was the pitch again? Making coffee and having heart-to-heart talks. Phenomenal, lovely little game. They set it in Seattle. And I always thought, like, why is this set in Seattle? And it's because that it stops them from having to explain a lot of things about the world, right? They don't have to explain Indonesia. They don't have to explain. They don't have to explain what the prices of coffee are. They don't like. They can just go like a coffee is $3. Done. Khalas, right? Like let's get to the heart-to-heart part.
Yeah,
and they sneak in their culture, right? They sneak in their culture and their background, and it's there. And they introduce a number of things through sort of like this Trojan horse method of talking about Indonesia in this fictional version of Seattle. And I think they're at the point where they feel strong enough as a studio to just go, no, this game is authentic Indonesian. It's in Indonesia. It's our childhood. It's our culture. It's our history. And we're going to put this in a game. And to me, that is
exciting.
Yeah, incredibly exciting.
So I've never been to Indonesia, actually. I don't know much, don't know much about it. It'll be interesting for me to play a game to get to know more about the culture and their perspective on things.
My father's in Indonesia now. He's actually there now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a fascinating country. I was there a few times when their development community was relatively young, and I got invited over to like see if I can help out or give a talk or something like that. They taught me some ways of like getting, because at the time a lot of the people I was hanging out with were students, so they taught me how to like have food cheap. Yeah. They have this thing where you get like a big bowl of rice in certain restaurants. I forgot what it was called. A big bowl of rice, and then you get these little bowls with meats and sauces and vegetables and stuff like that. And the basic way it works is the rice is effectively free, but you pay for the meats and the vegetables. But you don't necessarily pay for the sauces. So they kind of taught me to like pour the sauce, which was flavored with the meat and with the vegetables, over the rice, so I wouldn't get charged for using the bowl. And I was like, this is brilliant. This is really good. It was really fun. Also, like obviously, like part of me intellectually knows this, but it's really weird to like as an Arab Muslim, it was really interesting to be in a country that has so many Muslims, but that isn't Arab.
Yeah.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily speak Arabic. Like there's language, like there's Arabic, like it sort of happens through the Quran, because a lot of people still learn Quran and they learn to recite it and they learn how to pronounce it properly, but they don't necessarily, like they learn what it means, but they don't necessarily learn Arabic.
Yeah.
Right. I thought that was fascinating. It was really.
It's like the country with the most Muslims, right? It's like the largest Muslim country.
I think so, yeah. The largest Muslim country on earth.
Exactly. It has the biggest Muslim population. Second largest being India, which has the second largest Muslim population, but isn't a Muslim country. Indonesia is huge.
No, like I feel for like, with people from outside of the Arab countries when they want to learn Arabic, especially like, if they're learning Arabic through the Quran, they'll be learning traditional Arabic, like the Fusha. And then they go and visit the Arab world, and then basically Fusha that like nobody speaks it. I have a lot of friends in Europe, they get like, a formal education in Arabic. They get to learn Fusha, and then they go to like Lebanon or Jordan, and then like they just don't understand anything that's being said on the streets because everybody speaks in dialect.
Yes,
right. Yeah,
that's kind of true of many different languages, but yeah, definitely Arabic. The only time you really hear Fusha or classical Arabic is, in religious texts, of course, or historic texts,
right.
The news. A lot of TV shows used to be in that, especially children's TV shows.
Cartoons?
But like a lot of
all
TV
the cartoons
shows,
are dubbed in Fusha.
Yes, I was actually shocked when I found out that the Arabic cartoons were originated from Japan, but that's a different story.
In general, I just find the whole thing fascinating because the Arabic isn't a language. It's well, I mean, it is a language. It's a language group, right? There's a lot of dialects that so severely affect what is understood with words, with accents, with how letters are written. and how letters, not how they're written, but how they're pronounced, like individual letters even, right? That it's really hard to say that it is a language. I'm not sure what the official status is of Arabic, but even classical Arabic and modern standard Arabic, even the distinction between those is vague. And then you've got all the different dialects from like all the way over to Morocco, right? The sort of like Moroccan dialect, all the way through the Middle East up to Iraq. And then and then in the countries, you have your dialects that are between rural and urban. And even those are sometimes, like, I think most Arabs speak modern standard Arabic, right? Or understand modern standard Arabic.
I think everybody understands Fusha.
Yeah. Right. Then the interesting thing becomes that then everybody on top of that knows at least one extra dialect or two extra dialects.
Oh, at least.
Because then you've got, for a lot of people, you've got Egyptian,
yes,
which is sort of like the language of television series and movies and lots of music as well, right? Yes. And then whatever their local dialect is as well.
Yeah, I feel like Egyptian and Lebanese are like the two dialects that everybody gets just because it's like pop culture and music and movies and TV series. Kind of a lot of entertainment come from either Egypt or Lebanon, so people kind of get these accents plus their local accent or dialect plus whatever region they're from plus Fusha.
Yeah. I was shocked because I was raised on Egyptian, right? And the mosque in the Netherlands that I used to go to was Moroccan, so I just couldn't understand a word because the Moroccan dialect is very different from the Egyptian dialect. Of course. So I just kind of assumed that it was a different language. And then when we got to the Quran, I would understand it again because that was the Quranic Arabic, right? The classical Arabic that I'd been taught. But I didn't realize that Moroccan was just like I recognized some words and I'm like, this must be a similar language. Yeah. And it wasn't until much later that I like realized that, no, this is just a very heavy dialect.
Yeah, but they actually, because of their close proximity to the Berber people, they actually have a lot of borrowed words.
Right.
So some of the words that they throw in are not Arabic. They became Moroccan, and that's right. Totally okay. But also, some of the other words is just their pronunciation is different. Like I remember in Moroccan, they say wahed, and then they say juge, like oftentimes instead of thanan. And I'm like, juge, like that's probably Berber. And then it was explained to me that no, actually, it comes from the Arabic word jauz, which is a pair. So one, and then a pair, and then three, and then four, instead of just saying 1, 2, 3, 4. And a lot of dialects is like that. They they take a word and just the pronunciation is a little bit different and becomes unrecognizable if you're not used to it.
We've been colonized by different forces, so words from those colonizers sneak into our languages. But Fawzi, do me a favor, say two for me in Arabic.
Itnin.
Yeah, itnin. Okay, I also have itnin.
We say thnan. We skip the we just say thnan.
Right. Yeah. It's like elam for us, like pen.
Yes.
Yeah.
You would pronounce that differently, the two of you, right?
Qalam.
Column. Yeah.
Alam for me.
Yeah. You have alam as well?
Yeah. It's because the cough
sound. There's a Jordanian dialect that's a little bit harsher, so it goes galam. With a ga.
Okay. Galam with a
galam.
That's close to Khaliji. That's close to like the like Kuwait and
Jordanian dialect can like have a harsh ga instead of the qa or a. There's like there's also like the rural Palestinian can say qalam with a qa.
Yes. Right. Yeah, we say qalam. That's how we say it.
How do you say this is one that I found that is somewhat different. How do you say many, like katir for us?
Okay, this is weird, but we say huwaya. We also say
in Iraqi.
Yeah, Iraqi huwaya. It's a lot. I don't know what the root is of that. Don't ask.
I just love that there are so many words that we could sit around the table and talk and probably have trouble understanding each other sometimes.
Yeah.
Which
I think it's like one of those.
Remember the first episode that it came up. It came up when you said fajr for the prayer, right. And we were like, oh, we say fajr. It's because of the ga and the ja sounds. For Iraq is actually really close to Persia, like Iran. So we actually have a lot of the letters that we borrow from them. And it's interesting because one of the letters that they have that Arabic doesn't have is the ch sound. And we will take it and replace the kaf with the ch, but not universally. Some words will still say the kaf, and other words it'll be the ch. Like for example, like for dog, kalb, some Iraqis will say chalb. And but other words with the ka, like maktaba, nobody will say maktaba. Nobody will say that. So it's really interesting in the application of these borrowed sounds as well. Like I remember I spoke about the pa sound, that we don't have pa, but we have some words that we still retain the pa, because I'm guessing they're borrowed words from Iran, from Persia. Nobody else will get
might be right. Yeah. I just love that. The moment I realized it was when I had to stop somewhere, and on a stop sign, it was spelled in traditional Arabic, kaf, fi, just stop, right? And then but that's not how we pronounce it in Arabic, because we don't pronounce the K sound. We just use sort of a glottal stop, right? And I was asking my dad, it's like, Dad, why is it spelled wrong? And my dad was just like, that's not wrong. We write in a different language than we speak. And I'm like, wait, what? Yeah. Excuse me, back off. How did that happen? But it's fascinating because like even the word Ramadan is like one of those words that's pronounced differently, in that the D sound in that is a Z sound in certain dialects, in certain rural dialects. Also in the Persian, in Persian, it's Ramazan, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because Arabic is the only language that has the dad.
Yeah, the dad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's nicknamed the tongue of dad, because it's the only language that can use it. Which sounds for a lot of people like a weird D, but it's like a more accented dad.
Yeah. Right. But there's also a difference between dad and vod, right?
Yeah.
Except in Iraq. They sound the same in Iraq. We don't say Ramadan, we say Ramadan, and that's it. It's always the same.
Yeah, some dialects has that in Jordan as well. So like instead of dufda, frog, it's dufda. It's fascinating, like with the different dialects. When I go and visit Morocco, for example, I find myself like, talking in Fusha with most people, because they can't understand my accent as I can understand theirs. And it's funny because it's kind of like, two people, instead of speaking English to each other, they're speaking Shakespearean English. It's kind of like, imagine if like someone from Ireland goes to Scotland and then they start speaking Shakespearean English, because that's like the common language. It's kind of that. If I'm like, I'm talking to a Moroccan guy in Fusha, it's that kind of feeling. Like we both feel ridiculous, but it's like the only way for us to understand each other is to use that.
Well, how do you say? Somebody taught me this one. Like, how do you say wait?
استنى.
Yeah, we say انتظر.
Yeah, so we're close. I think انتظر would be more like Gulf.
Right.
Yeah, like more like the Gulf side would be more انتظر. We would be like استنى.
My favorite thing is if somebody speaks none of these dialects, they're just listening to us going like, what are these guys talking about? What are these words?
Exactly. We're just saying random stuff.
I have to admit, I kind of love that Arabic has so many. You can pretty strongly place somebody by their Arabic, from the words they use, even not just the dialect or how they pronounce things, but the words they use. But then, as a language, Arabic is also weird in that there's just stuff in Arabic that doesn't make sense linguistically. Like I studied for a while. I studied phonemes, pronunciation, right? Mm-hmm. Like how certain letters are pronounced, and they call it phonology. And one of the fascinating things is Da'in as a character. Yeah. It's just they just kind of gave up on that one. They're like, it's a sound. I think it was a voiced, I forgot what, it's a fricative, but I forgot which one it is. But they couldn't quite figure out what it was, and they ended up with like a creaky voiced epiglottal approximant, which is like, it's like creaky voiced, and it's epiglottal because it comes from like the back of your, basically the space in your mouth, like just at the top of your throat. And approximant because it's not quite that. It's not. They couldn't quite figure out what it was
for people to practice it.
people just like, there's a discussion about what sound the ain actually is. They haven't figured that part out yet.
Arabic has so many difficult sounds to pronounce.
Same thing with the ha, right? The ha. Same thing. I love teaching those two to people because they are really, the ha people can approach because it's just breathing out.
Yeah, but we already have a ha. That's the problem.
Yeah, we have a ha and a ha.
Yeah, the ha and the ha. And for people who don't know how to say the ha, they go to the ha, but we have that already, so it's a bit confusing.
Right. And then the other thing that's interesting about it is that the ha is without any like turbulence in the sound. It's just air.
Yeah.
But the H, as we use it in English or a lot of Western languages, is not quite that. So a lot of people add like vibration to the sound. And you get like a
yeah. Well, we have that already as well.
Yeah, I have that too.
So you go like Mohammed, and it's like, where did the come from? Why is it not Mohammed? Yeah. It's like Mohammed. No, drop the sound. And it's just
my brother's name is Ahmed. Right. The number of people, yes, exactly. The number of people who either say Ahmed, they skip it, or Ahmed, they go the other extreme. But
or they make it a K.
Yeah,
Ahmed.
Yep, you get that too.
Right.
I found that also when I try to teach people the letter Qaf, which has like a little click in the throat, right? A lot of people can't do that because it's not part of like their regular language. Go qaf, or like when you say the word for minute, daqiqa. It just sounds funny if you're not used to saying it.
Do you actually pronounce it daqiqa in Jordanian?
No, daya or daqiqa.
Oh, dia.
We say daqiqa.
Daqiqa in Iraqi, right?
Yeah, we actually say daqiqa. Yeah.
Daqiqa is the closest to the Fusha.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like whenever you teach that to someone, it comes out as kaf. They say daqiqa, which is like a very like rural Palestinian accent actually. When you say daqiqa, yeah.
My favorite troll about the Arabic language is still Muhammad Ali, right? Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Because if anybody was to change their name into an Arabic name, picking a name that has both the ha
and the ain.
I'm like, this is beautiful. I'm not sure this was intentional trolling.
That's right.
And you can figure out whether somebody speaks Arabic pretty quickly from that one.
Rest in peace.
Right. Yeah. We have different ways of saying hello and goodbye, right?
Yes.
As well. Or how are you, at least? Because Assalamu alaikum is pretty like standardized, right? How are you can change a little bit. Is there different greetings, or do we just all use the same one?
So we have one that I particularly like. We say shlonak, which actually literally means what's your color, but it really means what's your mood. Shlonak, all right? What is your color? I love it.
Oh yeah, of course.
Shlonak
aini. We just
shlonak aini. Yeah, that's aini means my eye, which is a word of endearment. Exactly.
we just mostly have a zayek.
Zayek, yeah. Kifak.
Yeah, that's our standard.
Kifak in Jordanian.
Yeah, we also have a more kif halak. Yeah, we also have a more slangy shaku maku, which actually means what is. Yeah, shaku maku, which is like shaku means what is, and maku means what isn't. So what is and what isn't.
That's
like what it is, fam.
Yeah, exactly. It's really slangy.
And for closing conversations, I guess we all use kind of the same thing as well.
It's mostly salam.
Salam.
Right. Well, I think it's time for salam.
I saw that coming. I love it.
I love how someone's excited.
I literally clapped.
That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I am Fawzi Masmar, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at Fawzi Masmar. My fellow Habibis were Osama Dorias, who you can find on Twitter at Osama Dorias, and Rami Ismail, who you can find on Twitter at THA_Rami. Send us your questions, stories, and suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. Intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubayla, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcasting service, or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening. Salam.